Welcome everyone to another video of Vinyl Addict. This is Chili and I'm going to rank all the 12 cult records and a couple of EPs that they released. So before I get into this, please don't forget to hit the like button, comment on this video, share this video, and if you still haven't, please subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell for updates. Okay, so with that out of the way, I just been re-listening to these albums, and what I thought would be on my top 5 or top 10 is, it's totally just changed after a while. And so I want to share this with you. So without further ado, let's start off with number 14, and that is the Peace album. Now, this album was an accompaniment to a reissue of the Electric album, because there is a relation to it. This was originally supposed to be the follow-up to the Love album. It's produced by the same guy, Steve Brown. Now, the Cult were not happy with the with this album. They felt it didn't really showcase their harder side, and so they eventually kind of shelved this album and went to Rick Rubin, and he pretty much had them re-record this album, and with some new songs, that they would record for the Electric sessions. Now, this album does have some cool songs on here, which were used as B-sides for the Electric singles, songs that were singles from the Electric album. So we have Love Removal Machine, Wildflower, Little Devil. So those were the 3 singles from that album, and the B-sides would be Love Trooper, which is one of my top 5 favorite cult songs of all time, and it's on this album, and Zap City, just to name a couple. However, the rest of the album kind of falls flat. There's just it's very disjointed. There's too many layered guitars, and it's just it doesn't get to the point like Electric does. It takes a long time for the songs to kick in. And so Rick said that he didn't produce Electric, he reduced the Cult. He didn't produce the Cult, he reduced the Cult, because this is, it's not one of the shining moments. So it's a good thing that they did kind of shelve that one. Now, number 13, I'm going to try to get through this really quick. So, Born Into This. Now, this is the follow-up album to Beyond Good and Evil, and they're still trying to do this heavy rock kind of drop D guitar music, which they did on Beyond Good and Evil, which sounded fresh at the time, but now it's getting kind of tired. I mean, this was on the Roadrunner label, which, their roster is just pretty much heavy metal, and they were on that label for this album. This is a Music on Vinyl limited edition 2000 pink colored copies. Now, songs that I do like on here are Diamonds, which is really cool because it kind of strays away from that kind of just drop D kind of rock. But Dirty Little Rockstar is another one, which is the lead-in single. Now, that is pretty much, to me, reminiscent of Undercover of the Night. It's the same guitar riff and the same phrasing of, I guess, some of the way he sings or whatnot. But you put these 2 songs back to back, yeah, you can see what I'm talking about from the Rolling Stones' Undercover of the Night and Dirty Little Rockstar. So if you're going to copy a band, why not copy the Stones? And that's why I like that song. So moving on to the number 12, Ceremony. Now, this came out in 91. This was the follow-up to the big successful Sonic Temple. Now, by the time this came out in late 91, there was a lot of bands like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden coming up, and all that whole Seattle grunge thing. And they were still kind of playing like a tired rock style that kind of seen its better days. And the ones that did survive and were pretty big at that kind of music, like Guns N' Roses, were putting out albums like Use Your Illusions 1 and 2, and then there was the Black Album. And so this one kind of just, was kind of like paid no attention to. However, there are some good songs on here. I liked White. White was really good. I saw this tour. It was awesome. Bangkok Rain. Indian is a great one as well. So, Ceremony. and that is number 12. Now, number 11 is the only one I don't have a vinyl of because I believe there is no vinyl for this, and it's Beyond Good and Evil. Now, this is an album I believe that came out in 2000, 2001, and it was the regrouping of Matt Sorum, who kind of put them back together because he was discovered by the Cult and he jumped ship and went to Guns N' Roses, and then that ended, so he wanted to get the Cult back together, and he did. And they put out this album. This is when they were starting that Drop D. Billy Duffy was doing the Drop D riffs and everything like that, and so it's a heavier rocking album with that sound. And War of the Process is great. Rise, which is sort of like an updated C-Cell Sanctuary kind of thing. Take the Power Back, Take the Power, and American Gothic are one of my those are my favorites from this album. It's okay. I mean, at first I used to love this album a lot, but now other things that have come into play, it's kind of like going down, and it's not like it didn't age well. It's just like compared to everything else, it seemed to shine back in the days when it was first introduced to us, especially when they were kind of regrouping and getting back together. It was a good album for that. And it just didn't, I just felt like it's a Bob Rock album. He does like 5 of their albums, and it's just like, it's not all great. I mean, I say like half of it is really strong, and the rest is sort of like, it's okay. So enough of this Beyond Good and Evil. But if it was on vinyl, of course I'm going to get it, because it would complete everything. So number 10, this is an EP. This is Capsule, and this came out in 2010, and it has like 4 studio songs, and it's produced by Chris Goss, who is or was the lead singer of Master of Reality. I don't know if they're still around. However, these 4 songs are very strong, and this came out in a time when Ian was not wanting to make any more albums. He felt like, we will just put out songs and call them these little capsules and just release them as we're finished recording them and mastering it. They just wanted to do it really quick because a lot of people were doing that at the time, newer artists, and just like throwing it online. And so they felt like making albums and records were kind of passé, so they were trying to jump on that train, and it didn't really last, and then they went back to making albums, which is great. However, they did put out 2 capsules and 2 studio songs, and it'll be like 2 other live songs, so Siberia, it was one of them, and was a great song. And Ambers is another one, and every man and woman is a star. The way that they write this is just really weird. But yeah, these songs were really great, because I felt like, if they're just putting out a couple of songs, they really want to make them strong and make them, grab people to grab notice. And so that's why I think these songs are so great, because it's like they probably had a bunch of songs and they just said, well, we're just going to put out one song and have people download that one, and let's just pick the best ones. And these songs were the best ones, and they finally released them. And this little collection here is in a reissue with the Choice of Weapon album. So Capsule is number 10. Now number 9. Now, a lot of people may not agree with this, but there was a time when this was in my top 10, or top 5. But because other releases have come, it's now come down, and in its ranking, and it's number 9. And it's the Electric album, and it's the answer to the Peace album, the one album that which started this whole thing off, down below at number 14. And this is very straightforward rock and roll. It's very recorded, very dry, and like I said, Rich said, I didn't produce the Cult, I just reduced them. and took out all those layered guitars and all that other crap, and just let's just get down to the basics. And the only thing that this album lacks now is I didn't like the cover of Born to Be Wild. They should have put in the B-side Wolfchild Blues in its place instead. I think it would have just been a perfect album with that song instead of Born to Be Wild. I don't know. That's just my opinion, just like this whole ranking. Now, number 8. This is another Bob Rock album, and this came out in 2012. This is Choice of Weapon, and this to me is just a perfect, or it's just a reliable cult album that's just really good. And when they got back with Bob Rock on this occasion, it seems like they weren't trying anything new, but they were just trying to make a good cult album, and they seem to be pretty comfortable with each other and just write some great songs, and they did. And from Honey from a Knife, which is a great opening song, The Wolf, Elemental Light, it's everything you love about the cult is in here. So it you could call it a safe album, but at the same time, like it's just the cult trying to just be the cult and just phoning it in. Not really, because at the same time, there is some depth and there's some weight to it still. Yes, it may not have moved the band forward like all their other albums. They're always kind of forward thinking, but I guess getting back after a while and putting out an album together after the whole Capsule thing, they just pretty much wanted to make a great album, just a good cult album, and that's what you get here. And so that is Choice of Weapon. Now, going to number 7. Now, this is an EP, and it is Death Cult. And, people would think, why would this be on here? To me, this is really the first cult album, okay? Because these songs on this EP are pretty much played live at the Lyceum during the Dreamtime tour. And so they just dropped the death out of it and went along with the cult. But however, it's part of their history, and it has the 3 guys, Billy, Ian, and Jamie Stewart on bass. And Jamie Stewart did do the Vietnam War cover, or he did the logo. I know he had something to do with the album cover. And the drummer, Raymondo, he was in the band Ritual, which was with Jamie Stewart, and he's the one who got Jamie in the band, actually. However, Ian didn't care for Ray and wanted someone more, I guess, tribal or something, like what they ended up getting with Nigel Preston. However, this album rocks. I mean, it was so raw, and I like the drumming that he does on here. I mean, the songs are very upbeat and fast, and I had this thing turned up, and it was just like, wow, this was a great debut. This is what I consider the real debut. And then number 6, we have Dreamtime. Okay, so this album is, still part of that era. Now with Nigel Preston at the drums, on the drums, and this album sounds like a band that's seasoned, that like they've been playing and writing songs for a long time. It's really odd for a debut album from a band back in that time, creating a new style, a new what was going on at the time with the post-punk and the goth, and it seemed to just have like these weird themes, but it was very welcoming. It didn't seem like it was an exclusive kind of band that you were, even though they're calling themselves the Cult, it seemed like it's for everybody if you want it, and if you give it a chance. And because at the end of the day, when they have songs like Bone Bag on the B-sides and some of the things that they were doing, like Flower in the Desert, the acoustic version on the B-sides of Spirit Walker, Billy Duffy and Ian were saying we were still just a rock band. It was still, we were still kind of in that blues-based kind of, that's where they're from, their origins, really. Because I mean, Billy was into like New York Dolls, he was into Johnny Thunders, they were into the Pistols, and so they were into three-chord rock, but they're making their own sound, and Dreamtime was amazing. And this is number 6, which brings us to our top 5. And I think every album on my top 5 here is, they're all great. And starting off with this one, this was last year's Under the Midnight Sun. Now, this was produced by Tom Delgetty, and this is one of the guys, as far as a producer, he's worked with the band Ghost, but for this album, it's always usually been like a Ashbery Duffy composition, just like a Jagger and Richards or Plant and Page, writing songs together. He's on like 3 of these songs, and this is a totally new direction where the Cult's ever been. And it's just like I felt like it was the album that Cult fans have been waiting for. However, there's a lot of people on the fence about this new direction, especially with Billy Duffy's guitar playing. It's very minimalistic, but when he does play, when he does do his solos, like my favorite song on here is Outer Heaven. That's a great track. But his guitar playing on here is amazing, and I do like the minimalistic style. He's opening up everything else, so there's all different kinds of instrumentation coming into here, and it's a very short album too. And the one thing which is great about it is that it's so cool and so unpredictable that you're wondering, wow, I'm like, I can't wait for their next album. Now, I wasn't like that after I heard Born Into This, because that seemed like, it seemed tired, but when they make an album that they exploring new sounds and new places and new colors, it gets you excited to see what else could they do. And that's what this did for me when I heard this album. So Under the Midnight Sun is number 5. Number 4, another Bob Rock album, and this was a very big surprise for me, was Hidden City. Now, this was, not only was it a perfect album, like say A Choice of Weapon, where it's just like, it's a perfect Cult album, but this is when they started doing what the Cult usually does best, and that's giving you a 180 degree unexpected turn from what they were putting out before. And they seem to have been rooted really well here and grounded, and they just put out some songs on here like Birds of Paradise and Hinterland, which is awesome, which are just, they're very just like atmospheric type of epic songs, and you don't know where they're gonna go, and they pick up, and they're just they're it's things that seem like they were carefully crafted, and Bob Rock again, is at the helm of going with this band to wherever they want to go. But there is some things that they put on here that remind you of what you like about the Cult, and that is like Billy Duffy's riff rocks kind of songs. And with GO8, the GOAT song, The Greatest of All Time, it's just like, yeah, I could just just throw one of those kind of songs out there, this just great rocking song with a great riff, you still just throw that out there. And Lilies is great. His guitar playing on that is great. That, that gentle kind of riff that he's doing on there. And of course, Sound and Fury. It's a great album closing song. All of these top 5 have the greatest album closers of the Cult. So there we have Hidden City, and this is in a cut at 45 RPM, and it sounds magnificent. So if you didn't think that album was good, I think you should revisit it. Now, number 3, this may come as a surprise, this song, because I think a lot of people always rank this one high, but I'm putting it at number 3, which is still a high number, is the Love album. Now, it is the album that kind of like made them a household name in some respect. They were still kind of holding on to their kind of cult following. They were just kind of like always alternative, but you know, because they still kind of, when this came out, you know, there were still bands that were more easy to take in, especially in America, you know, as far as, you know, their image is concerned. You know, people were okay with like the Police and stuff like that, and that kind of band, but the Cult was still kind of like that kind of gothy kind of look, you know, and they played them in clubs and things like that, and but it was because of the video She Sells Sanctuary, which really broke the band and got them to at least make their next album, Electric. And of course, it was a gradual success, but this is, without this album, none of that could have happened, of course. I do love Big Neon Glitter. Nirvana was a great opening track. There's some great guitar playing on that one. But then again, like I said, Black Angel is a beautiful song at the end. So great album, closing song there. Now, number 2, we're back to Bob Rock again. And this one, you know, I just been listening to this one. This is the thing that kind of started this whole thing off for me, because, you know, this was reissued and I listened to this album, and this has always been in my top 5, you know. I always felt like this album was the album that the Cult was pretty much a standalone album, whereas every other album on this Cult, you know, their catalog, they kind of, you know, are reminiscent of each other, whether they fall back and do certain things they did on this album or the Love album and or whatnot. But this one kind of is just like, it's a black sheep. It's just like it doesn't fall under suit with the rest, but it is the Cult, you know. And I think, you know, just like what Metallica was doing, is that when they had a self-titled album, it was a way that they could just put their past behind and start a new chapter. And I think the Cult was kind of going through that, and they went through, well, let's just do a self-titled album, and, you know, we could just destroy the, you know, ceremony and the long hair and all that stuff, and just try to not just blend in with what was going on at the time. You know, I mean, because yes, a lot of these hard rock bands were kind of doing that. Were cutting their hair, and like Metallica again, Soundgarden and whatnot. That's why I felt like this album should have been out when Ceremony came out. They should have put this one out, or did start making music like that, instead of, you know, writing that tired, you know, dead kind of scene of just heavy blues rock, you know. And from the beginning of this album of Gone, you know, Ian is really singing some personal stuff, whether it's his childhood, child abuse. Like Black Sun is great. Coming Down was awesome. It has like kind of a shoegaze kind of feel to it with the layering of the guitars. It's kind of noise rocky. Be Free, of course, there's that great riff rock 3-minute song that Billy could only do. And there's some kind of grungy type things. Universal You, which is awesome. But then again, I do love Saints Are Down. The last album, the song on the album, it's like I said, this is a great album closer right there. The only thing I didn't care for is Sacred Life, but it's still a strong album to be on the top 5. So there you go. Now, which just brings us to the number 1. Of course, it is a Bob Rock again production. It is the first time they worked together, and it's Sonic Temple from 1989. And this is the album where they kind of mixed the Love album and the Electric album. They're two sides to this band, and, you know, this is what you get. Sort of big arena rock is what, you know, Billy Duffy wanted to take the band, and, you know, just by the cover in itself, it's just screaming rock and roll, and it's classic. And this is the last album with the original three that started from the Death Cult: Jamie Stewart, Billy Duffy, and Ian Ashbury. And had what? How many hits on here? It had Firewoman, which was a great song. Edie Chow Baby, which I feel is like reminiscent to Tangerine from Led Zeppelin's third album. Sweet Soul Sister is awesome, but my favorite song on here is Soul Asylum, which is a kind of a Zeppelin-esque thing again, kind of a Kashmir kind of epic song. And the bass line on that is awesome. The bass line on Sun King, it was a big loss when Jamie Stewart left. I mean, it just kind of, band pretty much recovered on the 1994 album, this album, but that's why the Ceremony album, there just seemed to, lack something, and that was just how to write songs without a bass player like this, That's my number one. What are your thoughts on my ranking here? Did you feel there was it was unjust? Did you feel that some albums should have been higher, or like the Electric album, or some people love Ceremony, and but they're all great albums to me, in one way or another. In one, even there's some good things, like I said, I could find in Even Born Into This, but this is the ranking for how it is now, on this date. But yes, so leave me a comment below, and with that, I'll shut up, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye.